Hi, my name's Paul Mescal, and I am going to be chatting with my friend Jack Lowden about slow horses. How's it going, Jack?
Good, yeah, good.
Good.
Yeah, yeah.
It's an odd environment to be talking to a friend in about their work and trying to take each other very seriously, but I will endeavor to do my best. Um, how are you doing?
Yeah, good, good. We
Mhm.
were I was shooting some today, so yeah, it's never out of my head at the moment, which is
Very
good
much in the
fun.
thick of it. How much have you got left on this go round?
So we're on number five at the moment, and I think we finish sort of mid-July,
Right.
July-ish. Yeah. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff in Slough House in that big manky set at the
Yes.
moment,
Yes. Yes.
which is great fun. I've actually got I got my brother. My brother's on like work experience
Is he doing
moment.
what?
He's in the props department, uh,
Great.
and he's not really allowed to do that much. He's just sort of been there, just sort of like watching like resets and things like that. And he said today actually we did like a scene. I think it was about a four and a half, 5 page scene, and he didn't. I don't know if you feel that when if you've ever had like folk from home or mates or whatever that come on sets. I get really conscious only
Oh,
when,
absolutely.
but when they're on set, I suddenly get really conscious of how actually quite boring it can be. Because he did say he's been on loads of my sets, but he was like, I really can't quite understand how you're doing it that many times.
No, I
Like,
know. I think I've kind of made a rule now where I've stopped inviting friends and family because it's
yeah,
really only interesting to the people who want to be there. It's like I remember taking my dad to something once and I was like acutely aware that it must be mind-numbingly boring in the context of like the repetition and everything. But I want to talk a bit about the kind of durational aspect of like you've been playing this character for what? How many years now? And
four.
um,
Yeah.
4 years. And I suppose the thing that actors always talk about with working on television is that that's one of the like big positives of it is that you really get to go into the weeds with a character and it's fleshed out over years and years and years and years. And I suppose what are the takeaways that you get in terms of process and has it changed the way that you work as an actor working with the same character for a kind of good chunk of time?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing how much it's changed. I mean, because I basically came from stage. I did stage for years. I was quite late to doing anything on camera. I was like 23, 24 till I really started doing anything on camera. And I still find it, but there was a long period after that where I felt like I didn't know what on earth I was doing. And I couldn't put my finger on as to why. And
Yeah.
it took me years to realize the lack of rehearsal uh,
Uh-huh.
on camera. That sort of I missed that, craved that 6, 7, 8 weeks of rehearsals where you can throw everything at the wall, and it not only gets in your body, but like the ways that you can head down that don't work, that
Yeah.
don't feel right, you weed them out so well.
Yeah.
That's so wonderful about stage, and you don't get that as much on camera. And what I've learned is that little sort of like precipice jump, that giving yourself permission, you can do that from take to take, and it's not trying to nail it in the first take or the second take or whatever.
And how does that feel? Because I'm envious of it and feel like I can do that from time to time, but then there is that I fully agree with you. Like working on stage gives you that time and that space to kind of mess it up essentially. It's like
Hmm.
figuring it out. But with that, I think it's incredibly it's a brave way to work and kind of I think a lot of actors are envious of that approach, I think. But there's something that is interesting to you to talk about that when it comes from when I watch you, especially in season three, it seems so easy. You look so comfortable, and it's like just I'm gonna go off on one for a second about how comfortable you look on camera. You look just so in your body and the choices that you're making are incredibly colorful, but at the same time they're not ostentatious. And that's just I have a sneaking suspicion that's coming from a kind of theatrical background where it's very craft heavy. Like I think to go on screen and do something that is heightened but also rooted in reality. It reminded me, do you know that scene in Saving Private Ryan where Tom Hanks goes in to try and make the coffee when they're, do you know, at the end when they find Matt Damon and he goes in to try and make the coffee and he's fiddling with the
Oh
coffee pot.
yeah.
You have a very like there's a similar quality to the way that where you're playing him where it's so rooted in human condition, but it's funny. It's and it immediately reminded me of that. I think that's such a hard thing to do right. It's so, and it just takes experience. And I don't know what the question is exactly in that, but I think, do you think that is harking back to like the theatrical background, or is it preparation, or is it kind of the spontaneity, or is it a mixture of all of the above?
Everything I do comes back to stage, and everything I do is rooted in is 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 rooted in some kind of humor because that's how I choose to go
Yeah.
through and deal with life. And you know
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I know.
Like I struggle to take myself seriously and moments seriously, and how I deal with sort of grief or deal with
Yeah.
the shit things in life. It's always through some humor, and I go to the joke as quick as I can, probably too soon and too quick. And I love using humor on camera and in roles to to solve problems of stagecraft. It was doing something
What do you
to
mean by that? Like by solving it with stage? So you're using the humor as a kind of as a tool for the character, but also for yourself.
yes, it's a way of not playing as a complete character as possible, and I find humor. Obviously, its main purpose is to make people laugh and whatever. But it's a wonderful tool to pull a character, pull an audience in a certain direction that you have always got one eye on. It's like playing football. Like you've got one eye
Yeah,
on, you
yeah.
know where the ball is eventually going to go. But if you can take somebody over here, then it's
Mhm.
going to make the goal feel way sweeter than
Well,
just if you go straight for the goal.
and there's that wonderful moment. Do you know the scene with when Freddie Fox's character spot when he takes you into his like the private security firm. There's
Okay.
that wonderful moment when it's cutting between yourselves and Freddie, and the way the camera holds on you, it's like you buy this presence in a way because you've kind of seen him fumbling along, kind of getting beaten up and all this, but then you see a real like incredibly naturalistic rage that comes out when you step towards him. You go, I can't remember what the line is when you step towards him, and I was like, oh, that's it's just such clever acting because as you said, you're just buying yourself time to drop in little beats that surprise the audience because they're not expecting River to act that way.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I've only managed to learn getting older doing this, is that I've slowly been able to let go of consistency in a
Right.
character.
Jesus. That
Abs-
frightens me beyond.
I know,
Yeah.
and it frightened me for years, whereas I was always doing that thing of I would have an impulse, quite often like a humorous impulse or a
Right.
stupid impulse or an impulse to make him, the character, look weak or whatever. And I would fight it because I
Right.
would go, but that doesn't align with how I've always seen the character. He
Yeah, yeah.
can't he can't suddenly it did a scene with in the Jim Brooks film that I did this year. That's what I was trying to go with, talking about using stagecraft,
Gotcha.
human sort of fixed stagecraft problems. There was a shot of me and Emma walking up a corridor, and Jim didn't want us to start the dialogue until we got to the foot of these stairs, but it was quite a long walk. And Jim was like about to start moving the camera and shotting it. And I said, no, 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 Jim. I said, I know what to do. I'll do something. Let me try something to fill this. And I've got a piece of paper in my hand. I'm trying to get her to read this piece of paper. And so on action, I got halfway up the corridor and I purposely dropped the paper and turned around and picked it up and carried on. And it not only did that serve to sort of you go from looking at this guy who you think's making a really good point, and
Yeah,
you
yeah,
listen to his point, all of a sudden your opinion of him might change in that split second, and you think, oh, he's a bit of a donkey because he's just dropped a bit of paper.
gotcha.
It's also serving to sort of you don't have to then change the shot. And I think with River, um, I've grown into that impulse and just for I think it's one it becomes the most sort of boring thing is to aim for consistency. And you
No, I
go,
know, but it also, like, to give yourself credit. I think what I think you're talking about is kind of, rather than pursuing or seeking consistency or seeking spontaneity, which is kind of the holy grail for acting, right? You hear it all the time. It's like being in the moment and listening. But then you're also talking about something which is kind of on the other side of that, where it's the actor part of your brain and then the impulse, and the impulse being spontaneous. And that's what I think is just, that's the bit that I find like very difficult to describe to people who aren't actors, where they see this finished product cut together with music over the top of it, but they're not seeing a director go to an actor. It's like, well, I don't want the dialogue to start till you're at the stairs. But what I think is what's genius about what you're saying is, like, there's an easy out there. There's an easy out where you can just turn to the director. It's like, so we shouldn't, like, let's just get rid of this walk at the start. But what you're doing there is you're losing the opportunity to, like, protect your character, to give your character another opportunity to articulate something, be that not maybe
yeah,
non-verbally, but something physically. And that also takes a lot of, I think that takes a lot of bravery, because that could be, I don't know, maybe like, I find the job can be very exposing.
it
You
is.
know,
Of course,
it's
it
a
is.
terribly embarrassing job at moments
It,
when you like it's,
it
yeah.
is terribly embarrassing. I still, like I say it all the time, but I still feel, I still feel that acting on a film set is like acting on a building site.
What do you
It's
mean?
still, it feels like because the amount of crew that obviously the audience don't see, I feel like a guy that walks up to like a bunch of scaffolding, like a bunch of guys putting up some scaffolding on a building site, and I turn up in like a cape and I go, here, lads, you want to hear Hamlet? And they're like, what? Like
What
that's
is
what it still feels daft to me that
Yeah.
you've guys putting up fucking lighting rigs and all this kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden that's all going to shut up and I'm going to go to be or not to be. And it's like those worlds colliding is mental for me.
It's,
That's what,
yeah, and but do you find that there's moments when you have to acknowledge the absurdity of it, right? But then there's other points in it when you have to lean into the fact that it is ultimately, there is a self-serving aspect in acting innately. And this is the thing that I think is in conflict. It's a team sport in the like the world that everybody's creating for you to go and do, to be or not to be, let's say. Then there's a
Mhm.
bit of you, and this is where I feel like the embarrassment lies, when you have to lean into the fact that it's like, this has all been set up for me to now pretend to be someone else in a silly voice. And then you know what I mean? And I think that
Yeah.
that it's that step. It's when it's all set up and ready to go, and you're looking at the kind of mechanics of it all, but then you have to go, okay, well, I have to do the embarrassing bit now, which is the
Yeah.
vulnerable bit, the bit when you have to expose something somewhere along the way.
But I think that's it's again it's like the longer you go through a career is that I think you let your opinion of things that you think are either weaknesses about you as an actor or things like that, you start to learn that, oh no, that's what's quite wonderful about what you do. And it's like when I watch you and stuff, it's interesting you saying that about you feel embarrassed. And a lot of your work as well is so beautiful, it's so beautifully constantly vibrating on a certain frequency that's not a primary color and not a real, like it's not just like one fucking big note all the time. It's vibrating on, it chucks little things like that. Like when I watch you act, I don't know if you're even too old, yeah, too young. Do you remember the Sonny Bravia advert for the TV? And it was that Jose Gonzalez track Heartbeats. And basically the advert was just a load of multicolored bouncing balls let off down a street in San Francisco. And it was shot in
Okay.
slow. And like that's how I feel when I watch you act, is that there's loads of little things doing this. And
Hmm.
it's interesting that you said that you operate from a place of embarrassment, because it's almost like that's serving you to sort of play along like this and not go like that, you
Mm.
know. And
Well,
it's
but this is the innately difficult thing about this conversation. It's like we've talked in pubs about, like, we talk about the embarrassing side of acting, right? And I think the point of that is that I think it can only be embarrassing if you care about it a lot.
yeah,
I
that's
mean, and that's because we've talked endlessly about acting in pubs and with friends, and I think it's an obsession that we share, and I think embarrassment, and I don't know about you, but it's also a safety mechanism. It's something that makes you go. It's like this, you know, when you're a child playing sport and you're under 14s and you're playing some match and you're like, this is the be all and end all of my existence. And I think that's not to say that as you grow older of course you become more aware that there's more to life than just this job, but the job is conditioned to be something that you think about from 6 a.m. in the morning when you're picked up to 8 p.m. at night, and then you're going home in the evening and you're thinking about the next day. It's not a normal job in that context. And
no.
for and what I hear you talk about, I think you've got such a balanced approach where you operate from a sense of play. You're a playful human being, and you manage to bring that into your work. But the big takeaway for me in season three is watching you at these all-timers, Gary Oldman, Jonathan Price,
Yeah.
and you're in there. No, but this the crazy thing is that you're not like you are taking up space in a way that I find so impressive and so in control and so funny and light. And it's that thing that you're talking about. The frequencies are just it's just deeply spontaneous, but from an actor's perspective of watching another actor, you're like, God, they're so in control of the instrument in a way that is probably false and goes against what you're describing. But to me, from the outside, it looks like total kind of ease and comfort. But that's probably coming from maybe your sense of play rather than overthinking it. That's what I'm kind of gathering
Well,
from you.
that's the thing. When I first started on screen, I overthought everything to death. I would wear out the car. This is because of how I was conditioned from being on stage and not having any rehearsals. I would wear carpet out in
Yeah, yeah,
hotels. I remember when I was in Vilnius in Lithuania shooting War and Peace with Jesse and all
yeah,
these guys. And Jesse would be out. Jesse would be like, let's go and see. Because me and Jesse got really close, and Jesse was like, let's go see this church. Let's go over there. Let's go and see this thing. Let's go over there. And I'd be like, no, I've got to be in my room. Why? Because I need to rehearse my 5 lines in the scene tomorrow. And I would wear out the carpet, just going round and round like a madman. And
yeah.
but turn up so wound, so tightly wound and prepared. And it's taken years to sort of loosen that coil. And
Yeah.
is I still maintain that it's from letting go of consistency. Like if I, I want to direct one day, and if I have,
You're a brilliant director. Yeah,
but get some brilliant actors and just sort of encourage them to just forget going. My character wouldn't do that. There's a
yeah,
place,
yeah.
there's a time and a place for it, but
Go
for
Cassavetes on it.
no, exactly, I watched because of doing that James Brooks films. I watched As Good as It Gets with Jack
Mm.
Nicholson,
Ah,
one of the
yeah,
brilliant James Brooks Jack Nicholson, and the whole start of that film for ages and ages and ages is Jack Nicholson playing this sort of strange character who's so smart-mouthed and he seems to
yeah,
know his opinion about the world and seems to have a sort of confidence that he doesn't care, he moves through the world. And the genius part of that performance is there's then a scene where he walks into his therapist's office, and the scene literally opens with Jack Nicholson walking in. He shuts the door and he just screams, help! And he
yeah,
loses his cool. And
yeah,
you watch this character who's so smart mouthed. And if you thought of him just in that vein, you wouldn't get these huge fucking leaps.
yeah. And it's
And it's
also it's having the like kind of balls to go. I'm going to give an audience a little insight. Like it's not going to be extended through periods of the film. It's going to be one beat, but that's going to be the thing that gives you those peaks and troughs, right?
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah,
and the other wonderful thing about Slow Horses is because of that consistent the amount of time you spend on the set and in a certain character is it's learning to love what you love about playing the character. And one of the things another thing I've really enjoyed developing over the years, my love for is knowing where I am in the frame and how I can use the frame to be
Right.
fun, to be funny. Like if I enter from this side of frame and then have to go back out, I love playing with that. I love
Is that something that you've developed through slow horses in particular?
no, it's something that
Always been there.
only slow horses and everything that I've done after that, because slow horses was such a change for me in terms of
Mm.
finally gave into the humor that I've always naturally lent towards. Is that slow horses has just given me this wonderful platform to just try so much stuff.
So
And
like from a practical level, how many takes would you say you'd be doing? And like, is it multi-camera? Is it single camera? Is there any rehearsal? Like on a practical level, are you then watching? Are you say asking the director to show a rehearsal so you're seeing the frame? Or are you asking the operator, where am I and what's the size? What's the lens?
um, I think so. I think I should ask what the frame is more
Mhm.
because I just like if we're shooting on some stairs, I get excited about it
Yeah.
in thinking about it like, but it's on stage, and I'm like, I've got to come down these stairs, and is there a point where I can come down these stairs and think that I've seen a piece of like get my foot caught on a piece of gum? It sounds like total like kiddie sort of
Well, this
pantomime.
is the thing. Remember when you came to see uh Streetcar and you were like, I feel like you play little games with yourselves and the other actors around you. And I wish I had more of that in me, but there is something incredible. Like when you came in, you're like, I need you to do a triple take. I was like, there's no hope in hell I'm gonna go on stage and do that. And then whatever kind of demon took over me, I was like, I'll do it for Jack. Something because it makes that kind of play makes you feel very alive because it does I think it does something to your blood pressure. Something just spikes. Adrenaline goes in a way that is like invigorating. And
Yeah,
so you're
because
playing those games with yourself.
yeah, because you'll kind of you'll kind of shit yourself
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because you kind of go if I do that there because sometimes you do things like that and you forget your next line.
Yeah. You spook
That,
yourself.
yeah, exactly. I did one of the plays I did when I was really young. I he had to open up a champagne bottle every night,
Oh,
and we did that play for about a year. And I opened and he's pissed. And I opened this champagne bottle, and it didn't come out. I couldn't get it out, and the whole thing evolves around me drinking
yeah.
more. And the whole point is that he gets more pissed, and I suddenly started to make the decision, right, well, this can't be pissed. And I was terrified where it was going to go, but it took it somewhere really cool. And then at the very end of the scene, I'd given up the bottle, I put it over there.
Yeah, yeah.
The cork of the bottle went,
Boom.
and that gave it something else to play with. And it's really wonderful to like, the reasons that you do certain things. Again, it doesn't have to be because my character would do that. I think it's a wonderful reason that you get bored if
Yeah,
you're on stage. I'm going to
totally.
do something because I'm bored. It doesn't fucking matter what the reason is. It's what the reason the audience think it is.
Totally. And it's also knowing. Because this is the wonderful thing about our job is there's so many schools of thought, and it's like whatever gets you over the line. Like I think the only things we've settled on in total agreement is that this job can be deeply embarrassing and deeply fun, and though that conflict is rubbing right up against each other all the time, and it's whatever process it takes to get over the line. But I think the way you describe it feels like a healthy way of having a sustainable career where your characters are dynamic and like I think that's how people inherently describe you is that there's a dynamism to you as an actor that is so easy to watch. Like you feel I feel so comfortable in anything I've ever seen you done. I just feel like it feels like I feel comfortable watching it. I'm never like watching an actor going like, oh, what's it gonna be? I'm watching this kind of comfortable experience that also feels dangerous and can go in different directions. It's like watching somebody who's great at sport, but like you feel comfortable in their presence. But I think I want to talk a little bit more about your experience of working with the other actors on this and what you've learned, obviously what you've learned, but also what kind of have they given advice, or is it just kind of by osmosis?
I mean, the with Gary again. That's the great thing about working in these islands at times is the real the theatre background of a lot of people, a lot of
Yeah,
actors of that generation. They all grew up in theatre. They've played every part under the
yeah,
sun. So like their sort of their Rolodex of things is so
yeah.
huge. And with Gary in particular, like Gary turns up, he's prepped, he's learned his lines months in advance. He can't work from a place unless he knows his lines. And he moves through scenes like a knife through butter. And
His control of language, the way he says a line, like I know it's so basic, but his delivery of things is so masterful. I think it's just,
oh,
but
it's
he just is a
wonderful.
master. So I think it's yeah, it
But
must.
Gary has like that old school theatre thing as well, where like Gary comes at it through a sense of humor all the time as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Gary's played really dark characters in his career, but there's always a sense of humor underneath it. It's the same with Kristen Scott Thomas.
yeah.
Kristen works from a place of like she's sort of like above the lines all the time and is sort of like
What do you
working
mean
out.
by that?
Well, she sort of like she comes in vibrating at a very sort of high frequency when she's in stuff because she sort of she doesn't she flights around the set a lot and she goes, I'm gonna do this, I might do that, I don't know, whatever, I don't know, I'll do that.
Yeah,
And she's I don't know a lot.
just
And then
keeping herself occupied
yeah,
in the present tense, and then once the
yeah,
camera's on, it's just
yeah. And then they go action and then she just goes into something.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
you don't see it in the rehearsals with Kristen. The camera comes on, you go, fucking
Yeah,
hell.
I love that. I just love that. Like it is the best thing. Like imagine yourself like growing up and being like, I'm gonna be in a TV show for years with Gary Oldman and Scott Thomas. Like it's absolutely insane. It's
Yeah,
insane.
yeah. Oh my
Yeah,
God. No way would I have believed that. But it's a real honor to just get to work with these people and
yeah.
it's
Really
fun.
extraordinary actors. But
Yeah.
and it's a difficult thing to articulate, but there's a kind of there's a sense of pride that I get when I watch you because I know you and I know how much you consider your work and the choices that you make, both like in your career, but also just like the fact that when all the dust settles, you're not pursuing anything in this career other than the fact that you loved it. Like you love the job, you love going in and playing, and I think it keeps your like my understanding of you and the person that I know is that there's a boy just constantly trying to get out. And I think you've found the perfect career that just allows you to be childlike and in your imagination all the time. And to watch that and talk to someone who has a clear articulation that and I fully agree with you, this job can be tortured enough as it is. Like there's certain days at work that are just innately difficult, but that's not the thing to fetishize, I think, as actors. And I think you articulate it so beautifully, and you articulate it both as you speak and as you work. That the thing that we should be fetishizing as actors is imagination and play. And I think you do that beautifully. And yeah, I think you're just a brilliant actor, Jack.
Oh, fair enough. There you go now.
Um,
Honestly, my favorite thing about doing this, and it sounds like an arse, but my favorite thing and what I get a kick out of the most is when I feel I'm getting better at it.
yeah,
Love it.
it's the
And
best feeling.
because it doesn't like I don't feel like that all the time. And it takes
Oh,
years and it's
have
taken
you
me
had any moments of that recently?
yeah. All the way through Slow Horses, I was probably really tight at the beginning,
Yeah.
and now I sort of move through it with no fear, and it's wonderful. I mean, even if the work is no different from the first season, I don't care because how I feel in my body, I feel like a lot more fearless, and that's a wonderful place to play from is no fear.
Yeah.
you know,
And it is
this,
just experience, right? It's just time spent. It's like that 10,000 hours rule. It's like a lot of it can be considered and kind of up here, but a lot of it is just durational and it's time and it's
yeah,
hours spent with other actors, hours spent kind of getting into conversations, arguments with directors, not arguments essentially, but I think they can be useful. But these kind of, yeah, time spent on set, time spent in rehearsal room, time spent
yeah,
learning your lines, it's all
yeah.
um builds you as an actor.
I knew this is what we would do if you and I spoke.
What?
I knew this is what Paul and I do when we sit. And you said that in pubs. We sound like a pair of arseholes that sit in like
Uh,
cravat. But
I, I, I despise when we see other actors do the exact same thing that we're doing.
we're talking about acting, like talk about life, man. Talk
Yeah,
about
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, I think we've just got to lean into the fact that I think this is the version of the act. Yeah.
No, man. Thank you so much for doing this.
No, thank you for your work, and I'm delighted to chat to you
Oh man, thanks, man.
in a pub soon and chat more about acting.
See you there.